Beneficiaries are anxiously waiting for the distribution stalemate to be broken before April the 1st. Meanwhile, COSATU demands that heads must roll for the Sassa crisis.
Ticking for authorities to ensure that social grants are paid out without a glitch on April 1st. And there are growing calls for heads to roll for the bungle.
COSATU says, hey, we think this is a very terrible thing that has happened. Some people must take responsibility. We're making a call to the president to intervene on this matter, and those who are responsible for this must take responsibility. That's how that call even towards the minister comes. And we hope that the reaction to that is going to impress on the corrections that must happen there, because something is definitely not coming right there.
Meanwhile, the Social Security Agency is planning to resubmit its Constitutional Court application for the current service provider's contract to be extended beyond March 31st. Sassa also has to consider a number of options if plans to extend Cash Paymaster Services' current contract fall through. 17 million people must be paid their social grants on April 1st. Trucks can be used as a backup option to deliver money to rural areas. 90% of grant beneficiaries have accounts with Grindrod Bank. Sassa can use Grindrod Bank to pay beneficiaries who have accounts. 40% of Sassa beneficiaries have their grants paid out in cash. Sassa can change from biometric security to PINs at cash pay points and Postbank. But Sassa seems to be stuck between a rock and a hard place, as no alternative plan to pay out social grants seems to be foolproof.
We received a report from a panel of experts that were looking into the feasibility of taking this work forward. And they reported to us that we have only 6 options. One of them was doing it through the current service provider, CPS. The other 5 options are, for instance, paying out through the banks, the post office, cash, etc. But unfortunately, none of the 5 are a silver bullet. We need a combination of all these 5 options. And the only company at the moment which has the capacity to can deliver all the options that are available so that people can use different channels of payment such as ATMs, banks, swiping at stores, etc. is CPS.
Cabinet is set to intervene in the Department of Social Development and Sassa crisis. Meanwhile, social grant beneficiaries can only hope the stalemate is broken fast. Bureau Report, ANN 7.
And joining us in studio, Tsepo Khadima, political analyst. We have Methandiwe Zulu, Black Sash Gauteng Regional Manager. And you at home are most welcome to give us a call. Let's start with you, Mr. Khadima, in terms of with the cash masters or cash pay masters holding government to ransom, essentially, in this. Why is it that the technology cannot be replicated?
Well, look, I've looked into this matter, I think, since it has become of national importance. And I'm actually flabbergasted that there are those that are asserting that it is impossible to migrate from one service provider, in this case being Cash Paymaster Services, into either a government run or a Sassa run system or into another newly contracted. We have to take into account that when the Constitutional Court, which is the highest court in the land, ruled against the tender that was given to Cash Paymaster Services, that was essentially end of the road. What has not been explained to date, and I'm wondering on why there has been nobody coming forth to explain why from day one after that court judgment was granted in the Constitutional Court, there were no steps taken to ensure that we do not end up at this point whereby there is absolutely anxiety, and understandably so, by the beneficiaries or of the various grants that get paid every month. And really one has to really read into, in the absence of any explanation, the people are going to reach their own conclusions on why there was that failure. It's absolutely unforgivable that we can be sitting here and today that even the Sassa people are themselves seemingly caught by surprise that the contract is coming to an end at the end of March 2023. 17, when in any case this contract should have been terminated. The moment that the Constitutional Court made that finding, it should ordinarily have been terminated, and it wasn't. So these are the main things. But what I find absolutely unforgivable, not only by Sassa, but by the ministry concerned, is that this was not the time to really not be anyway. If anything, Minister Batabile Dlamini is supposed to have been who should have been at the forefront and communicating to the nation and specifically to the grant recipients as to what measures are being taken into place to ensure that come the 1st of April, they will not end up with an April Fool's joke. They will actually be paid the grant that will be due to them. And why she has not come forth, it is absolutely unforgivable. This is not time for spokesperson. It's a time for the minister to come and address the nation. But somebody has to take accountability on why they failed to take the measures the day that the Constitutional Court made the finding that it did. And going back to court now is not and last, Cindy, I want to say this. Cash Paymaster Service and agent, they are not the proprietor. The proprietor of the database of the beneficiaries. The proprietor remains Sassa. So why they are not handing over that database to Sassa so that Sassa can then, come the 1st of April, be able to make those payments as they are due and payable based on that database, for me it is beyond me, because that database belongs to the state and it should therefore be handed over to the state, as was the case. All these other things of trying to have the contract extended, they are just completely unacceptable.
Yeah. Mem Zulu, would you say that this is sort of an emergency that was created by Sassa and for whatever reason to benefit cash paymaster services and creating this chaos unnecessarily? Do you think this Sassa could have done more to avoid this stalemate and crisis? Tandiwe, can you hear me? All right, so but just that, I mean, it just seems that it was an unnecessary but chaotic situation that was created by Sassa on this part, that they had ample opportunity.
Sassa and the ministry are the architects of this misfortune for the many, and they should take responsibility. Not only take responsibility, this is not time for explanation, it's time for them to tell the nation what measures are in place to avert this crisis that they are the chief authors of. And certainly if they do not do that, the question becomes that, well, what will the president do? Because after all, the buck stops with him. That's what the nation, the recipients of the grants, they have got a legitimate expectation, and a good one for that matter, to say, well, in the event that the ministry fails, in the event that the state organ called Sassa failed, what is the president going to do? So if we are talking about now communication in clear tones, I couldn't make it any more clearer than that. The government needs to communicate in clear tones to avert this crisis. And also they need to communicate that the contract that will be given or even the system that they will adopt will not cost any more than the 17 rand per transaction fee. We have to bear in mind, well, we don't know what are the costs that are involved by the service provider, that we don't know what the profit margin is for that service provider. But what I do know is this: at 17 rand a transaction, it is just absolutely rich. It's not a transaction that I think going forward, it is sustainable. At all times, and taking into account the austerity period that we find ourselves economically as a country, at every level, there has to be that they have to pursue, all state organs, including private sector, they have to pursue low-cost production or provision of any service. And to provide a service at that fee without really prejudicing the service provider being cash paymaster services, I think themselves, they know that they've had it too good. If they were to continue doing this, I'm sure they should have found ways and means based on volume. You know, volume buys price. I cannot see how with 17 million transactions, they can insist on such a higher transaction fee. And I think the other banks, or other service providers will quite reasonably be valid in their having a grievance against such a transaction. What is the solution? The people that are paid, the big bucks, that have got the responsibility. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. Therefore, the minister, the people that are in charge of Sassa and the president They are the people that need to really communicate in clear tones. I think what the Deputy President said yesterday is just not acceptable. It was not an acceptable explanation to say, though there is no Armageddon, something will be done. We've gone beyond something. There has to be specifics of what will be done to ensure that this self-authored calamity is avoided.
All right, let's get the last word from Thandiwe Zulu. She is a Black Sash Gauteng spokesperson. Thanks so much for your time, Mem Zulu, or regional manager rather. You know, when we spoke last, you were saying that this is a cash cow for CPS and they're not likely to want to relinquish this kind of a benefit, if you will, but it is the making of Sassa and the Department of Social Development. COSATU is calling for heads to roll, that the minister needs to take account. But obviously this is not something that has been done so far. What do you think the minister should be held liable for?
Maybe if you remove the person, we need to speak at a level higher. We've got a South African constitution that actually adheres to the human rights, and the social assistance is on section 27 of our constitution a basic human right. So we've got a state here that has the mandate to actually see to it that our constitutional rights are upheld as citizens of the country and everybody that lives within the country. Now in this instant, people that are supposed to be taking the responsibility, it is our take. They should take the responsibility. They should make it their responsibility that the constitution is upheld. So we've got president, we've got the ministers, and we've got agencies, and there is an oversight in terms of their roles, in terms of the mandate that they carry. So people should take their responsibility. We can't have 17 million people being in a state of paralysis, in a state of fear, in a country that says we uphold human rights, more especially on a Human Rights Month.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. I'm afraid that's all the time we have. Thandiwe Zulu, Black Sash Gauteng Regional Manager, and Tsepo Khadima joining us on the Sassa matter. And we'll leave it there for now. ANN7 continues just after this.